Creatine is overrated. You guys know that I don't mind saying something that's unpopular if it's true. So let's just talk about creatine real quick. And I'm not telling you that creatine doesn't work. In fact, actually, it's very true that creatine does in fact work. But it's overrated, and that's the catch here. So if you look through various articles and studies and things like that, even Greg Nuckols or Lane Norton, you know, they'll point out to you that creatine can boost your strength by as much as 10%. Now, that's an amazing number if you stop and think about it. I really want you to stop and think about a 10% increase. 10%, wow. You know, if you thought about elite level sports, right? 10%. I mean, that's enormous when we think about that effect, because oftentimes the difference between first place and second place is less than 1%. I mean, look at the 100 meters. We're talking fractions of a second. You know, you look at a weightlifting meet or something like that, you know, like the person who takes first place might have snatched 1 kilo more. Like, we're talking very small margins. A 10% improvement is huge. In fact, actually, just stop and think about this. If you currently squat, you know, 100 kilos and you started taking creatine, theoretically, you would be squatting 110 kilos, which is huge when you stop and think about it. For those of us who, you know, have been training for a long time, you're no longer putting 5 pounds on the bar every week. So if you currently squat, say, 400 pounds, a 10% improvement is 40 pounds just from taking creatine? God, you know, that would probably take me 8 months to put 40 pounds on my squat. Minimum. Might take me the whole damn year. So does creatine actually deliver? And the answer is no. No. Real world experience, I can tell you that looking at my athletes who started taking creatine, I have never ever seen a 10% improvement. Have I seen an improvement? Sure. Have I seen them increase their weight? Yes, likely due to water retention, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with water. That's not fat. They're not gaining fat from creatine, okay? But 10%? You know, studies out there suggest that steroids, anabolic steroids, increase your strength by 5%. But creatine by 10%? Doesn't make sense, right? And this is why I say it's overrated. Secondarily, I'm going to point something out to you that should be obvious, okay? But I'm going to start it off with pointing out something similar. Some people go on a keto diet and they feel great. Some people go on a keto diet and they feel like absolute shit, okay? Same thing for low carb, right? Some people go on a low carb diet and they feel absolutely wonderful. They're like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. Why didn't I do it sooner? And some people go on low carb and they feel absolutely horrible. That's interesting. Why would that be? Well, you know, we all have individual responses. So when you have all these studies saying that, you know, creatine is safe and it's good for you and it doesn't have side effects and all this stuff like that. And, you know, creatine doesn't cause hair loss and creatine is this and creatine that. And, you know, that's true on average. Like for the majority of people, they take creatine and don't have any issues. What about the outliers? If you've been coaching long enough, you have come across someone who took creatine and was like, dude, my hair is falling out. I've had female athletes who started taking creatine and their hair was falling out. This does happen. Does it happen to everyone? No. Does it happen to the majority of people? No. But every once in a while, you have someone who takes it and their hair falls out. I have had multiple conversations with various people who tried taking creatine and found that they had joint pain. And they were like, as soon as I stopped taking it, like within like a week, the joint pain went away. So I was taking creatine and I had all this pain in my knees and I was like, why do my knees hurt? What have I done differently? Well, then I did start using creatine and then they stopped taking creatine and, oh gosh, they're fine. It went away. Ben Pollock, I don't know if I pronounced his last name correctly. He made a comment about how he always thought that he was a creatine non-responder because he was taking the 5-gram dose. And then when he bumped it up to 10 grams, that's whenever he finally had an effect. Well, that's true too. I have seen people who take 5 grams of creatine and tell me they had no effect whatsoever. I don't notice any difference at all. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, stop taking it then. And instead, what they did was they started taking more. And I've had guys tell me, I didn't notice any benefit till I was taking 20 grams a day. Now, that's weird because we all know this from that loading phase thing, but these are guys who have been taking creatine daily for like months and months and months. So they were way past the point where they needed a loading phase. Why do they need more creatine? I don't know. They're bigger, more muscled, more powerful. Maybe they expend more of it. I have no clue. There's probably some very good metabolic explanation for these guys. But, you know, maybe it's even their absorption. Maybe they, 5 grams and they're only absorbing 25% of it. So, it could be an absorption issue. There's all kinds of weird things. I'll note this. This is something that I've seen myself personally. Does creatine cause muscle cramps? Well, it does for me. I have no idea why. Probably something to do with the fluid dynamics. But yeah, creatine definitely. I get calf cramps, specifically calf cramps when I use creatine. Why? I have no clue. Or my foot will cramp, which is always weird to me. Like the sole of my foot will cramp, like the arch. Oh God, that sucks. If you've ever had a cramp in your foot in the middle of a set of squats, it sucks big time. I never get that. I never have cramping, except when I use creatine. And the other thing is, and this is just something that, I've noticed, I keep track of things. Every time I've suffered a muscle strain, which is the actual muscle belly tearing, it's been during a time where I was using creatine. So as a result, okay, I no longer use creatine. I haven't used creatine since, I don't know, 2015. I don't use it anymore. I won't use it anymore. I don't have a reason to use it anymore. But to me, even if it did produce a 10% strength improvement, it's not worth it to me. It just isn't. I don't like having cramps, and I don't like the risk of having a muscle strain. Muscle strains suck big time. And so, the injury risk for me and cramping, not worth 10%. So, if it boosted my squat by another 30 pounds even, still wouldn't be enough for me to care. I would not care. If it took my squat from 345 to 375, I don't care. Don't care at all. Because I don't get paid for lifting weights, and no one cares how much I lift. I have yet to go to a judo match where someone asks me how much I bench, how much I deadlift, how much I squat, how much I clean. No one has ever asked me how much weight I lift. Ever. No one cares. And this would be different, obviously, if I was competing in powerlifting or weightlifting. Okay, people do care how much you lift in those sports because that is the sport. But if you're competing in judo, like no one cares. You curl 45s, that's cool. I just tossed you around like a rag doll, so I don't really care. It's one of those things. Does it make a difference? Yeah, I'm sure it does make a difference. The question is whether or not the difference is actually as big as it is hyped up to be. And that is the point that I'm making here. It is overhyped. I think it is overrated. Does creatine work? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to deny that it works. But does it actually measure up to the claims that people make? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And in fact, actually, even with all this neurological stuff, it seems to be only neurologically beneficial in these older adults. And my question is, are they even eating enough meat? Because we know that a lot of these older adults are not eating a ton of meat. I eat 3 pounds of meat a day. I'm not sure that I need to be supplementing with creatine. And in fact, I'll actually even take a step back and say maybe my problem is that I was actually getting too much creatine because I eat so much meat. I'm probably getting creatine from meat and then supplementing on top of it may actually be overdosing creatine if you think about it. So, is creatine effective? Yeah, sure. I'm not going to argue with that. Is it overhyped? Yeah, absolutely. I really don't think that you're going to see a 10% improvement. I've yet to see it. Maybe for a vegan, because they're creatine deficient, makes that big of a difference. But for, a normal, regular adult male who's eating a sufficient amount of meat for their protein intake, I don't think you're going to see a 10% improvement from taking 5 grams of creatine. I just don't think it's going to happen. So it's just overrated. It's not that it's bad, it's just overrated.